Welcome to the Just Ingredients podcast. I'm Cara Lynn, and here we talk all things nourishing to the mind, body, and soul. This is a place where you can find just good ingredients to life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we have Devin Burke with us, a TEDx speaker, best-selling author, renowned sleep coach, and he's founder of Sleep Science Academy. Devin has helped over 40 million people stop suffering and start sleeping, and he is going to teach us all about better sleep today. So welcome to the show, Devin.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk sleep.
Well, it's a huge issue. I do know that. I have so many followers who struggle with sleep, so we're going to delve into that. But will you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself and your background and maybe why you even got interested in, the study of sleep?
Yeah, so I live in Park City with my wife and mini Bernedoodle. And when I'm not helping people sleep, you can find me on the mountain, either snowboarding, mountain biking, or in a river fly fishing, hiking, or running. So I'm a super active person. That's why I live up here in the mountains. A little bit about my background. So actually, I studied exercise physiology and health promotion in college, and I was going to become a doctor of physical therapy. Went on a little adventure for 2 months through Europe, realized, hey, you know what? That's not what I'm supposed to do. And then I discovered health coaching. So I did a holistic health coaching program through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which isn't really about nutrition. It's more about what feeds us in life. And then that kind of set me on this journey of studying with a lot of different gurus like Tony Robbins, Brendon Burchard, even Indian gurus like Sadhguru. I studied all different types of things really to help understand, how do you live a fulfilling, vibrant, healthy life? I was on a search myself. And so that was like a 10-year process of going to all these different certifications and different courses. Most of it was intensive training, even some group awareness training, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with EST out of the Human Potential Movement, but I did some of that training. And then eventually it led me to sleep. And at the time, I was coaching a lot of high-performing entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners. We were doing a lot of, I would say, is performance coaching. That's what I would call it. Most of them couldn't sleep well. And one particular person was like, hey, listen, this is really affecting my life. The doctor prescribed Ambien. I can't take it. The side effects are worse than not sleeping. What do you know about sleep? You studied all these different things. And at the time, I honestly didn't know anything about sleep. I was like, I don't know. So I said, give me a week. Let me just sort of see what else is available. I couldn't find anything. What I found was medication. And then I did discover something called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So that kind of set me on this little path to go down and study sleep. And so I started to just dive into sleep science. I started to read a ton of books. I just started to see and understand sleep at a deep level. And I was able to help this person. So I was like, okay, well, if I can help this person, maybe I can help other people. I started to experiment with some of the clients I was working with that also had struggles with sleep. And then I started to get consistent results for people. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something here. And that was about 7 years ago when I started Sleep Science Academy. So that's the quick version of a long story.
Okay, good to know. Well, like I said, I want to delve into this because I have so many listeners, followers who deal with sleep. And this was sort of interesting. The other night, a doctor and I did this whole class and people afterwards came up and asked us questions and thanked us for speaking. But literally it was person after person after person who was like, I have such a hard time sleeping, or I always wake up in the middle of the night. What do you suggest? So my first question for you is, why do so many people suffer with sleep issues? Why can't we just go to sleep and stay asleep?
Yeah, and it's a loaded question. The main answer to that question is people don't understand their mind and body. That's literally. So sleep is a result. It's a natural biological process that happens. And if it's not happening, it's the body trying to communicate to us to pay attention. That something is out of balance in how we're thinking, in how we're behaving, and how we're being in our life. That is it. You don't have to think about your hair growing, your nails growing. You don't really have to think about breathing. Sleep's in the same category. Sleep happens. And if it's not happening, all it means is there's something to learn. And for most people, what there is to learn is how they're dealing with or managing their stress. Because our days affect our nights. People take their days into their night. The first time people really slow down and have a little bit of space to think about what's going on in their life is usually when their head hits the pillow. And that's when the mind starts to race. You're thinking about, oh my God, all the things I need to do, I didn't do, I have to do. Mind starts to go, the body starts to respond, the body follows the mind, starts to release cortisol, adrenaline. And then, maybe you can fall asleep, but you wake up in the middle of the night and then that process happens. Maybe you have to use the restroom, or maybe, you just wake up, you come out of a sleep cycle, and then the mind starts to go, right? You start to think, and then the body starts to respond. And this is the pattern that millions and millions and millions of people suffer with every single night. And that's why so many people really struggle with sleep.
Okay, so I'm just going to delve into solutions. We're just going to talk about some solutions for people to help them. And then we'll talk about some other things. But okay, you're saying it has to do with what we're doing during the day. So like if we want to prepare for a good night's sleep, are you saying learn how to manage your stress, or are there other things to do?
No, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. For sure, managing stress is a huge part of it. But honestly, a great night of sleep starts as soon as you wake up. Literally, as soon as you wake up, you're setting yourself up for either a great night of sleep or a challenging night of sleep. So what most people do is when they wake up, what do? They pour themselves a big cup of coffee, right? And then what do? They open their laptop or they look at their phone. They're looking at emails, social media, text messages while they're drinking caffeine. The worst thing to possibly do to set yourself up for a great night's sleep. And here's why. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And most people, they think, oh, cortisol is bad. Yeah, you need cortisol. Cortisol is healthy, but it's highest in the morning. And when you drink caffeine first thing in the morning, it's like shocking the system. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. So it's going to increase cortisol. Your adrenals are going to start pumping out more cortisol. That cortisol is going to stay elevated for the rest of the day. And then you're on your device and you're getting bombarded with all types of things, which is again, add more cortisol. So now most people start their days already in a heightened state of stress and anxiety. And it becomes normal. People don't even realize it. And so rather than starting your day like that, super simple, wake up, drink a big glass of water, go outside, put your feet on the ground, get some sun on your skin. And why that's so helpful is, number one, we lose liters of water through respiration and sweat throughout the night. So we're already waking up in a dehydrated state. Number two, we need light. Light is what sets our circadian rhythm. And most people are totally disconnected from the Earth's biorhythms of light. And also the magnetic field of the Earth, which, it sounds like a hippie thing, but there's science around grounding. There's a frequency. Most of us are totally disconnected from that. So that if you wake up and you just go outside, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and get your feet on the ground, get sun on your skin, and drink water, you're starting your day in a way that's going to set you up for a great night of sleep.
Okay, that is so good to know. So getting on those screens though right away, is that causing circadian rhythm issues as well, or why is that an issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's more because these devices, well, one, yeah, they're putting out different frequency of light. So, blue light, the sun has blue light, but it's full spectrum. And our devices like our phones and our laptops and TVs, it's not full spectrum. So you're only getting a spectrum of light, which is going to disrupt the circadian clock. And that's especially important also at the end of the day. But it's not just the physical impact of light, it's also from the mental stimulation that comes from what we're actually doing on these devices. Like when you're checking your email, when you're on social media, it actually is doing certain things to your brain. You're in comparison mode, you're in problem solving mode. You kind of get into these different states, and in those states, the body responds in a certain way. And if you become really body aware, if you have really good body awareness, you could start to actually notice how you feel when you're on certain devices physically. There might be a slight contraction. You might feel a little bit of tightness in the stomach. So part of really understanding the impact of this is creating the awareness around how do these things actually affect us. And not to say that, being on the computer or being on your phone is necessarily a bad thing, but understanding when it's appropriate and when it's not is really important if you want to set yourself up for amazing sleep.
I agree. Okay, so I had this conversation with a friend the other day. She can't sleep very well, but she loves her coffee. So I was like, just try not having the coffee in the morning and see if it helps. And she's like, but I'm exhausted when I wake up. I have to have my coffee. And so why are people exhausted when they wake up when they've just, had a good night's sleep? Some of them.
Yeah, usually it's because they're not getting into the deeper stages of sleep. So they're not getting enough delta sleep or REM sleep. And if you're not getting enough sleep is important, right? And knowing what enough is also important for you. But knowing the quality and depth of that sleep is also important. If you wake up after, let's say, 8 hours and you're still completely exhausted, and this is an ongoing thing for you, you're doing something that is getting in the way of your body getting into these deeper stages of restorative sleep. And that's a clear sign. And that's why the sleep tracking devices are amazing, because they're like taking a blood test for your sleep. You actually can see, oh my gosh, I'm not getting into these deeper stages of deep sleep or REM sleep. And then you can start to troubleshoot, well, what am I doing that's getting in the way of this natural process from happening? And that's when you can really start to do some of the things that I'm sure we're going to talk about today.
Well, and then I was going to say, what is causing some people not to get in that deep REM sleep?
There's a lot of things. The big thing is people eat too close to bedtime, caffeine, alcohol. These are just like common things that people do that get in the way of quality sleep. So caffeine blocks adenosine. Adenosine builds up in our body and creates this thing called sleep pressure. You can think of sleep pressure as like your body's hunger for sleep. And if we have caffeine, it's in our system for sometimes up to 12 hours. The half-life of caffeine is like 6 hours, depending on how fast you metabolize caffeine. So that's blocking that sleep pressure from building up. And that's going to create what's called sleep debt. So that's one thing. Food. The first quarter of the night. So a sleep cycle is 90 minutes, about, okay? And so we go through different stages in a sleep cycle. The first quarter of the night, so the first 2 cycles, is when most people get most of the delta deep sleep. That's the body repair. And if you eat too close to bedtime, the blood goes to your stomach to digest that food versus your body isn't able to get into those deeper stages of sleep. So that's a huge one for a lot of people. People say, oh, I need to eat. I need to go to sleep on a full stomach. And it's just not ideal for sleep quality. The other thing is we talked about is the blue light.
Yeah, that makes sense. All of that. So I want to ask you though, if a few things might help people sleep, because I know we sell like a magnesium complex, and I swear that always helps people have a better night's sleep. And I think it's because it's helped regulating their nervous system. But would you agree or disagree with this?
No, I agree. I mean, well, as you're probably aware, most people are deficient in magnesium. It's totally deficient in our soil. And magnesium is great for relaxing the body. It's also involved in like thousands of other enzymatic activities within the body. So I think it is helpful for sure. I think that people rely on supplements. There's definitely a time and a place for supplementation. And if you're deficient in a supplement, make sure that you're supplementing to, increase that deficiency. But really what I found, and I've been doing this work for a long time, those are smaller improvements. It's really the mindset and lifestyle changes that make the biggest difference for people with sleep. But magnesium is one of those things that I have seen consistently help people with the quality of their sleep.
Okay, good to know. What about exercising throughout the day? Does this influence your night's sleep?
Yeah, in a good way or a bad way. So if you exercise too close to the time you go to bed, that's going to change your body temperature. And the 2 things that control sleep are light and temperature from a physiological level. So if you're exercising really late at night, you're going to increase your body temperature, right? And the body needs to drop 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit for sleep to happen. Exercise, one of the reasons why exercise helps improve sleep and sleep quality is because it's such a great stress reducer. Like when you're moving your body, when you're breathing, when you're, it's just, you're releasing any tension or pressure that build up in the body. It's one of the best ways to release stress. And so that is one of the reasons why it's like a pressure valve relief for people to then be able to actually get to sleep and stay asleep.
Interesting. Okay, I've heard you say when we're peacefully asleep, our bodies are wide awake. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, so a lot of times people think like sleep is an inactive process. It's the opposite. There is so much that happens in our body while we're sleeping. So our immune systems, there's something called the lymph system. It's like the lymph system for the brain. This is during the night. So this washes beta amyloid, the plaque that builds up that creates Alzheimer's. There's so much physiological action that's happening in our bodies while we're sleeping. It is not passive at all. Even though we're just not conscious of it, there's so much that's going on that's allowing us to actually have the energy to live, to fight off, cardiovascular disease, cancer. I mean, it's the time when our bodies actually repair and recover. So it's an extremely active state. And most people think that it's just like this passive waste of time. I used to be one of those people. I'm like, wow, this is just like, you don't think about it. But we're doing it. There's a reason why we spend a third of our life asleep. If it wasn't evolutionarily important, we wouldn't need it. We wouldn't be doing it. We wouldn't be spending a third of our life asleep. And it's just like we don't think about it. It goes air, water. The next thing important for our survival is sleep.
Good.
Then it's food, then it's movement. And most people, when you ask them about their health and wellness, what do they think? They think, oh, it's nutrition, it's exercise. Totally disregard sleep. But it really is the next most important thing after air and water. You'd only last a couple of minutes without air, a couple of days without water. The next most important thing is sleep.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about it like that. And I don't think a lot of people realize like sleep is when your digestive system is being repaired and a lot of things are happening with hormones for hormone balance. Insulin issues are going on. I mean, there's just so much.
So much. Yeah, and that's important for people to realize that, if you prioritize and protect sleep, it's not a waste of time. There's such a stigma around sleep. Like people think it's a waste of time. You hear like these things like you snooze, you lose, sleep when you're dead. It culturally, sleep has been viewed as a weak habit of like laziness. And so there's all this bravado around, oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep. Oh, I only need 5 hours of sleep. That conversation is starting to change, but it's still in the mass consciousness. It's still a lot of people just really don't understand how important sleep is and that it is the foundation of health. And if we're not getting it, it affects every single part of our life, not just our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, our creativity. It literally affects every single way, and every single important thing in your life is affected from sleep.
Okay, I'm glad you just touched upon mental health because I talk a lot about mental health on my page. And so I actually want to talk about that. Why does sleep deprivation actually affect our mental health?
Yeah. So one of the things that happens is people are not able to emotionally regulate. And I'll give you an example of what that means. So after and they've done studies on this, after a poor night of sleep, meaning let's say you had 3 or 4 hours of sleep, you're walking down the street and you see people looking at you, you're going to misinterpret how they're looking at you. And you might say, oh my God, these people are staring at me. They're angry at me. They're dangerous. So we start to misinterpret how we see the world as a result of not getting enough sleep.
Really?
So that it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's actually amazing. So you start to actually, when you're living your life, you start to, the anxiety level is heightened as well. You make poor decisions. So the decisions that you're making are going to cascade into more bad decisions, which then affects, you get people get in their heads. Like think about the last time you didn't sleep well, how you felt physically, but how you felt emotionally. We feel off. We're foggy, we're groggy. And then, how we take action in the world from that state then kind of compounds it. More stress, more anxiety, which creates, unfortunately, less mental health.
Okay, so people that are dealing with anxiety, could one of the root causes of that anxiety then be they're not getting enough good sleep?
It's like a chicken or the egg question.
Yeah.
So it really is. So yes, and if you're not getting enough quality sleep, 100% that could create anxiety. Having anxiety creates poor sleep. So it's kind of this bidirectional relationship with anxiety and sleep. And so that's unfortunately where a lot of people get stuck, is they're not sleeping, so they're anxious. And because they're anxious, they're not sleeping. And this becomes a pattern, and then people develop chronic insomnia, and it can really spiral out of control for a lot of people.
Okay, I do want to talk to you about insomnia, but I do have another question about this mental health. Why is it, though, when you don't get enough sleep, and maybe you touched upon this a little bit already, but when I don't get enough sleep, I'm so emotionally not stable. Like, I just want to cry over everything. And I will give an example that last week in the office, I was exhausted. It just had been a few nights of bad sleep. I was purely exhausted. Someone said something to me. I literally couldn't stop crying. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, part of that's hormonal. So we talked a little bit about, it's during the night where, estrogen and testosterone and cortisol and adrenaline and growth hormone, all of those hormones are being regulated, reset. So part of it can be hormonal. The other part of it is when we're just tired, we're more emotionally sensitive. Like when you're tired, you're just more sensitive. You feel things more. Again, you misinterpret things, facial expressions, what people say, what people don't say. We just are more on edge. And part of that also is during the night, during REM sleep specifically, that's when we're working out a lot of the emotional trauma of our day. Dreams are really, this is a theory because nobody really knows, but it makes perfect sense to me. When we're dreaming, that's when we're actually working out a lot of the undealt with emotional trauma, if you will, throughout the day. And so if we're not going through that important stage, then there's a little residual that kind of carries over into the next day because there's some unresolved feelings, felt and unfelt, that kind of cascade into your next day.
Yeah, that's interesting. We could do a whole show on dreams and dreaming because I have heard a lot of stuff about how dreams help repair the brain basically and detox the brain, things like that. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, you touched upon insomnia, and I want to talk about this with you because I want to know what it is really, because I feel like I get a lot of followers that say, I have insomnia, and I'm like, do you really, or do you not know how to get to sleep or fall asleep? I don't know. So just tell me, what is truly insomnia classified as?
Yeah, so there's a couple different classifications. So there's acute insomnia, which is for a couple of weeks, chronic insomnia, which is more than 3 months. And what that means is there's two different types. So there's onset and maintenance. Onset is trouble initiating sleep. Maintenance is trouble staying asleep. And so how it's defined is if you have 3 or more days during your week where you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, and it's affecting your life for a few weeks or longer than 3 months, then you would technically have the classification of insomnia.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of people then.
More people than most people realize.
Is it millions of people that are dealing with this?
Yeah, I would say about 50 million people.
50 million?
Yeah, just in the U.S. And
Wow.
I think that's a conservative number. And the numbers, unfortunately, are not going down; they're going up.
Oh my goodness, this is a huge problem. Okay, so are the causes of insomnia then basically the things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so there are physical reasons why people have insomnia. So it could be a side effect of a medication. It could be from pain. Like if something physically hurts and it's keeping you from sleep. But for majority of people, it really is all the things we're talking about. It's stress and anxiety. And it's also people try to control sleep.
What do you mean by that?
So people try to do things to force sleep to happen. And so this is really important for people to understand. You cannot control or force sleep. Sleep happens. And what people do is they'll try to do sleep hygiene, or they'll try to sleep. Lay in bed and try to sleep and see what happens. Your mind's going to start to go. It's going to be so frustrating because sleep is a letting go process. It's not something that you can control or force. And this is where so many people get stuck. And they listen to, other sleep experts, and they talk about like sleep hygiene, like have your room cold and dark, where you're blue and black, all these things. And they're like, well, I'm doing all that stuff, but but I still can't sleep. And the reason is because there's a subtle form of control that you're thinking, hey, I'm going to do all these things and then I'm going to sleep. And there's an expectation that that's going to happen. And again, that can create pressure. Anything that creates pressure to sleep is going to get in the way of sleep happening.
Because you're like stressing, trying to fall asleep at the same time.
Yeah, it's like a performance anxiety. People start to get anxious about their sleep and they start to overthink it. And then they think, oh, I need to do all these things to sleep. But sleep is a letting go process. It's a happening. It's not, it's like you can't force it. In some ways, you could take a sedative or something like that, but that's not real sleep. There's a difference between sedation and sleep.
Okay, but sleep hygiene is a good thing though.
For sleep quality, but not for insomnia.
Oh, not because it stresses the insomnia people out.
Yeah, here's the thing. So you ask somebody, one of your listeners that truly has insomnia, what they do to fall asleep. They're going to give you a long list. I take a bath, I do meditation, I brush my teeth, I stretch, my room's 68 degrees, I wear my blue. And then you ask somebody that doesn't have insomnia what they do to sleep, they'll be like, nothing. I just get in bed. It's fascinating. It is interesting. And this is something that I discovered after working with literally thousands of people, but it's people become overly obsessed with sleep when they're not getting it, which is understandable. But people become like a starving person looking for food, only their food is sleep. And then that puts all of this pressure around sleep and it makes it very difficult for sleep to happen.
Okay, I know some are like, wow, yes, I have the whole list of things that I do because I don't sleep well. So what are you suggesting to these people?
Yeah. Well, first realize that there's nothing you actually have to do in order to sleep. There's things that are going to help you sleep, but anything you think you need to do or you won't sleep, you really want to look at that. Because that's anything that creates pressure around sleep. And this is where really you got to start to understand how the mind works. Because if you don't understand how your mind works, the body follows the mind. And if you're thinking, I need to do all these things and that's creating all this pressure, try just not doing any of it and see what happens.
Would it be a good idea to tell them to maybe focus on their morning routine rather than their evening routine, or no?
Don't focus on sleep. I know some of this stuff, it sounds overly simplistic, but the less you think about sleep, the better you'll sleep if you're somebody that has sleep issues.
Okay.
Because what happens is people just obsess over sleep. They try everything, the functional doctors, the therapies, the devices, they do all of these things. And what it does is it props sleep up. And this is where it's difficult because sleep deserves to be propped up because it literally is the foundation of health. But if sleep's propped up, then it creates so much pressure to sleep. And that's the very thing that gets in the way from people sleeping. So just even having that understanding will help people sleep tonight.
Okay, but they could wake up the next morning and have their water and sunlight and put their feet on the ground, and that would be a better morning routine to help them.
It would, 100%. And I'm not saying not to do those things. I'm not saying not to take your magnesium. I'm not saying to start your morning. Like those things would 100% help, but let go of the idea of that is what's going to solve your sleep challenge. It'll help.
Get rid of the pressure and the anxiety and the stress of this.
It's how you relate to it. That's really the truth about it. It's how you relate to it, meaning how you think about it, that then has, for so many people, millions of people, that has people stuck. The sleep hygiene is amazing for increasing the quality of your sleep if you don't have insomnia. But if you have true insomnia, that can be the very thing that gets in the way from you actually sleeping.
Okay, that's really interesting. So it's just getting rid of that stress and anxiety and just going to bed.
Well, shifting how you think
about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mental shift.
Yeah. And the truth is, insomnia is not a bedtime disorder. It's a 24-hour challenge. And that's a really important distinction for people. And that's why I say a great night of sleep happens as soon as you wake up, because everything you do throughout the day, again, is kind of preparing your body and your mind to let sleep happen.
Yeah.
And if you just focus on it like it's a bedtime thing, then you're going to try to do all these things, control your environment, all this sleep hygiene stuff, which then creates more anxiety, which creates less sleep. It's a pattern.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I have another question for you. So I know that there are people who like always wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning or, around that time period, but yet they fall asleep just fine. But then you have the other group of people who can't fall asleep, but don't wake up during the night. So is that a difference in what's happening in their body? And let's maybe talk about the people first who can fall asleep easily, but always wake up at like 3, 4 in the morning.
Yeah, I would say that's the majority of people have a more difficult time staying asleep than falling asleep. So here's the thing. We go through about 4 to 5 cycles of sleep, 90-minute cycles of sleep throughout the night, if we're doing it right. At the completion of a cycle, we are coming out of sleep and then going back into sleep. Most of the time, we're not conscious, we're not aware of this. What can happen for people is they become conscious for a number of reasons. Maybe it's noise, maybe it's, you had alcohol and your body's heating up. Maybe your bed partner wakes you up, whatever. There's a number of reasons why somebody will wake up in the middle of the night. That's not actually the issue. It's, do you have a hard time falling back to sleep once you're awake? And so that's why the same sort of advice for people that have a hard time falling asleep is the same advice for people that have a hard time staying asleep, because it's not the waking up that's the issue. It's the falling back asleep. That's the issue. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So no issue. If you wake up because you have to use the restroom at 3 a.m., great, use the restroom. If you lay back in bed and within 10 minutes you're asleep, no issue whatsoever. Like, that's just normal. If you wake up, use the restroom, and you're up for hours or the rest of the night, now we have an issue. And that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people's patterns. And so there's some really important advice that will help tremendously for people that are stuck in this pattern. Now, I'd love to share it.
I was going to say, let's hear it, because I have many nights that I'll wake up at 3 and then my mind just gets racing and I'm thinking about all the things for the day. And
of course,
at 5 a.m., I'm like, forget it, I'm getting up.
Yeah. And this is a very common pattern for a lot of busy, successful entrepreneurs or just everyday people that work jobs, 9-to-5 jobs. It's a pattern, right? Now, this is going to sound very counterintuitive and paradoxical, but hear me out. If you lie back in bed after you wake up and you don't fall asleep within 20 minutes, don't look at the clock. This is an important thing. Don't look at the clock. As soon as you look at a clock, there's an internal clock that sets in your head. And now you're like, oh, I need 3 more hours, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. You're shaking your head.
Every time.
Yeah. So get the clock out of you, like turn the clock face, like literally the other way. Because if you use it for an alarm or whatever. So feel what maybe about 20 minutes feels like, if you're still not asleep after 20 minutes, get yourself out of bed, go to a place and execute a plan. We can talk about the place and we can talk about the plan. But first, let's talk about why to do this. Again, completely counterintuitive. Most people think, well, if I'm not sleeping enough or if I wake up in the middle of the night, then I need to spend more time in bed, right? And if I'm not in bed, then there's no chance that I'm going to get sleep. But what happens is the body starts this pattern of thinking, like a racing mind. The body responds. Now it's a pattern. You're tossing and turning. You're thinking about all the things you got to do. And you're anchoring that state to your bed and bedroom. And if you don't break that anchor, it will continue. So by removing yourself from your bed and going to a place and doing a plan, not to get back to sleep, just to do it because it's relaxing, you'll start to get sleepy. When you get sleepy, get back in bed. I'm not kidding you. If people just follow that one piece of advice, if they have challenge sleeping through the night, it could be the very thing that literally eliminates that for you.
Okay, interesting. So I'm going to get up after 20 minutes of not being able to fall asleep. But what can I go do? Can I go to my kitchen table and work?
No, please don't do that. So go to a place, and this is why it's important to have a place and a plan. And at Sleep Science Academy, we have this whole framework, place and plan. But so a place is something outside of your bedroom that is relaxing. You don't want to go to like a super bright room and, something that's really stimulating. Find a place in your house or your home or your apartment that is relaxing, that's not in your bed and bedroom. If you don't have that place, set a place up in your bedroom that's not in your bed. But ideally, it's outside the bed and bedroom. Now, what do you do? Right? This is the question. This is the $1 million question so many people ask. Well, what do I do in the middle of the night? And the truth is, there's so many things you could do. It's really uncovering what would work for you. So some people meditate, some people stretch, some people listen to podcasts or a sleep story, some people do puzzles. I have people that knit. I have people that pray, right? Do something, anything that doesn't involve technology and work, that is relaxing, that will help you connect to your parasympathetic nervous system. And again, this is really important distinction. You're not doing those things to get back to sleep. You're not doing those things to get back to sleep. That would be trying to force sleep. Just do it because it feels good. And then when you get sleepy, when your eyelids start to get heavy, when you kind of start to feel, heavy, feel that sleepiness, just get back in bed.
Okay, so we're not getting on our phones.
Do not get on your phones. Do not open your laptops. Do not, you could fold laundry. Some people fold laundry. Some people just do something that's really relaxing or really boring.
What about like laying down and doing some breathing techniques?
That would be amazing. And we teach a lot of those techniques at Sleep Science Academy because breathing is one of the best ways to get into that parasympathetic nervous system. And when you're in that system, when that system's turned on, sleep happens. Your body knows how to sleep. It wants to sleep.
Okay, so that is great advice for those that wake up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Let's take a quick break to hear from our show sponsor. It's no secret that I am a fan of Fontana Candle Company and their 100% natural essential oil scented candles, wax melts, and bath products. I love that they share 100% of their ingredients right on the label, something that most candle companies never do. They paved the way being the first candle company to have their candles independently certified as non-toxic by Made Safe, and now have over 100 products certified. Their wax melts and candles are made with beeswax and coconut oil. Most scented wax products on the market are made of petroleum-based paraffin wax, which may have negative health impacts when burned. Fontana has expanded their mission beyond crafting just clean candles and wax melts. They have launched hand soaps, bar soaps, and bath salts. All of their scents are amazing. I love using seasonal scents in my home without sacrificing health. Warm up your home this fall with seasonal flavors of pumpkin, cinnamon, apple, and clove. Head to FontanaCandleCompany.com and use code Carolyn15, KARALYNNE 15 for 15% off your order today. Now back to the show. Do you think that though people are waking up at this time because of a hormonal imbalance, such as not enough progesterone, or their cortisol levels being off throughout the day?
Could be, for sure, 100%. And to rule that out, go to endocrinologist, get your hormones tested and checked. 60%, I would say it's even higher, of women experience insomnia during menopause, peri, post, and it's very common because our hormones are like a roller coaster. They're fluctuating. And whenever there's a hormone change, there's going to be an impact on your sleep for sure. So definitely get your hormones checked. And also, it's good to know what your blood sugar is as well. So there's great devices. You could get a Keto Mojo or even, the ones that CGMs. Those are fantastic to understand. Just wear it for 2 weeks just to understand your blood sugar fluctuations and what foods affect your blood sugar, because 100% that could be one of the things that's creating the wake up. Not necessarily though, if you wake up, the wake up isn't necessarily the issue. It's the falling back asleep. That's the issue.
True. But is the blood sugar dropping too low? Is that why people are waking up?
Yeah.
Oh,
and that's a common thing. I mean, most people are, because of the food that we eat. I know you know this better than anyone. I mean, sugar is in everything, and most people are pre-diabetic. I mean, it's just the truth. A lot of people have no idea that they're pre-diabetic. And they are.
Yeah.
And it's just because we're eating a bunch of stuff that is loaded with sugar. It's so processed. Our diets are so processed.
Yeah.
So for sure. I mean, and that's a big important thing for people to realize that, get those things checked. Like get your hormones checked at least once a year. Especially if you're going through a change, metamorphosis like menopause. But know your blood sugar levels. Don't guess. go get a test. These tests are not expensive.
Yeah.
They're not. Just go to your doctor, get it, or go to a lab and just and know. So that way you're not just, stuck in this pattern if that is one of the things that's creating it for you.
Yeah. As I work with people and talk to people, I'm seeing that blood glucose levels are just terrible in people. And I feel like it's getting worse and worse. And that plays a role in sleep. And then more and more women are becoming estrogen dominant and don't have enough progesterone. And without the progesterone, that ruins sleep. And so I'm like, our sleep issues are going to get worse and worse unless people figure out their health life. You know what I mean?
No, and that's I'm so happy that we're having this conversation, because that's why we say it's not a bedtime disorder, it's a 24-hour disorder, because you can't separate your night from your day. Like, your diet affects your sleep, your movement affects your sleep, your hormones affect your sleep, the amount of light you get affects your sleep, how you manage or mismanage stress affects your sleep, your relationships affect your sleep, right? So everything affects sleep, and sleep affects everything.
Yeah.
So it is about finding the balance, or just, and that's why I said in the beginning of this podcast, if you're not sleeping well, all it means is there's something to learn. That's what I mean.
Maybe that makes sense.
And it's really important for people to understand that sleep is not the problem. Sleep is the engine light that's coming on in your body, telling you, hey, pay attention. Maybe your blood sugar's off. Maybe your hormones are off. You need to manage your stress. You need to really understand, like, what's creating stress. How are you dealing with it or not dealing with it? You need to look at your diet. Like, really, it's such a gift, actually, if you're having sleep issues, because it's painful enough to make people pay attention to the things that would really help them feel just so vibrant, alive, and healthy.
Oh, I love that. You explained that so well. And it is true, because it was just like a week's worth of waking up every day at 3:00 and not being able to fall asleep. Well, recently, it's like hit and miss when this happens, but it was like constant. And I evaluated my day. I was like, you know what? I have not grounded for a few days. Oh my gosh, I've been indoors so much. I need to be outside. Like, it was an evaluation, like a checklist I was going through, sort of like, what am I missing throughout my day that is causing this?
Thank you so much for sharing that. And if I really hope people heard what you just shared, because for so many people, that if they really took the time to do a little bit of self-reflection, they would uncover that thing that would really help them resolve their sleep issue.
Okay, so we talked about the group of people that wake up in the 3:00 hour. So I know the other group is like listening, like, wait, you haven't talked about us yet. So those that have a hard time falling asleep, is it the same suggestions for that group?
It really is. So, but with a couple little distinctions. Don't get in bed if you're not tired. That's one of the things. So people that have a onset insomnia or onset trouble sleeping, initiating sleep, if you are not tired, do not get in bed. The only time you want to get in bed is if you're tired or if you're sleepy. Okay. So there's a distinction between being tired and being sleepy. Okay. This is an important distinction.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So think about what it feels to be sleepy, right? Sleepy is like your eyelids kind of start to get heavy, sort of like, there's a certain feeling of feeling sleepy, and there's also a certain feeling of feeling like tired. They're different. Get in bed when you're sleepy. And for some people are getting in bed too early, and it would actually benefit their sleep to get in bed a lot later than, like, maybe they're getting in bed at 10, they're not sleepy, and then they have to take some 2 hours to fall asleep. Rather than get in bed and have it take 2 hours to fall asleep, just stay up a little bit longer when that sleepiness comes online, then get in bed. And again, don't try to sleep in bed. The last thing to do in bed is try to sleep. If you're trying to sleep, get out of bed, because it's not going to work.
Okay, well, it seems like you have to find the magic window then of when to go to bed, because there are a bunch of people that then, if they miss that time frame, they're like wired and ready to go for a few more hours. It's midnight and they're wide awake.
For sure. And that's part of a healthy circadian clock. So knowing your chronotype or your chronobiology, and you can get a genetic test, or, there's fun little tests you can take online that'll kind of point you in the right direction. Nothing's going to be absolute. But really, again, going back to that conversation of body awareness, the more aware of your body, it's going to speak to you like, hey, if you get sleepy at a certain time consistently, then that's probably your appropriate bedtime. A lot of times people are like, well, I'm just going to bed because my partner or my spouse goes to bed at that time. And so I'm just going to get in bed. But that might not be the best time for you actually to go to sleep, because we all have our sleep genetics and we all have a certain circadian clock. And so first thing I would say to people is get that clock as healthy as possible by doing things that don't disrupt the melatonin production, right? So not being on the screen super late at night, making sure you're getting sun on your skin, getting your feet on the ground. Those things are going to help the circadian clock, right? A healthy circadian clock. Then once you have that healthy circadian clock, now you start to bring the body awareness. Okay, what time do I start to feel sleepy? Is it 10 o'clock? Is it 12 o'clock? Some people it's 12 o'clock. There's nothing wrong with that. It can become a challenge if you have a 9-to-5 job and you got to get up at 6. That becomes a difficult situation for sure. But if you have flexibility and control of your schedule, then doing this experiment is like really amazing. It can really change the game for people.
Okay, that's good to know. And people can go get their testing done and see what it tells them. I have a controversial question because you brought up the word melatonin. And I thought, I'm going to ask him, do you like people taking melatonin to help them fall asleep, or you would wish that people didn't use it?
I would wish that people didn't use it. And here's why. One, it's a hormone. So it's like we're not just like taking estrogen and testosterone and growth hormone, hopefully, without like doctor supervision. And two, why not just support your body to produce the melatonin? Like I don't understand why. I get it. It's easier to take a pill, but our bodies naturally release melatonin. It's like a faucet that gets turned on, and that has to do with these cells in our eyes. When it starts to get dark, it sort of triggers the hormone cascade of, okay, now it's time to release melatonin. You can call it like the vampire hormone. So, taking it, and honestly, there was a meta-analysis that looked at all of the studies of melatonin in sleep, and it found that it didn't help sleep onset. It's really more of a sleep timer. That's why it's effective for if you're crossing time zones. If you're doing, if you have jet lag, proper melatonin supplementation for that can be super effective and helpful. And melatonin can also be used as an antioxidant for certain health conditions. So if you have a health condition and you're working with a functional health practitioner that understands melatonin and how and when to use it, it can be an incredible supplement, but it's really not for sleep.
I am so glad you said all of that, because I agree with you 100%. And it's exactly what I tell people on my page. It's a hormone. Figure out how to produce your own melatonin. There's so many things that we can do to help support that. And I always say, if you need it for jet lag and you're, flying to Europe or Philippines or something, use it for a couple days, but not every single night, especially for these kids. Some parents are giving it to their kids every single night.
I cannot believe that that's illegal. Like, it blows my mind. And I have to check. The European Union, you used to need a script, like from the doctor, to get a melatonin. They may have changed that, so I don't want to speak here, but I mean, yeah, like melatonin gummies for your kids, like what? No, please do not do that to your children. Like I just don't think that's a good idea for so many reasons.
Let's not disrupt their natural production of it and their natural cycle of it.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so I know you're the founder of the Sleep Science Academy. Will you just tell my listeners a little bit about that? Is that something anyone can find info from or attend, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, the Sleep Science Academy. So this is where we help thousands of people across the United States that have chronic insomnia, that are usually taking sleeping meds, or they've tried all the things and nothing has worked. We take them through an 8-week program that restores their natural ability to sleep through our process. And our process is educating people, giving them the tools and the support they're missing, and also measuring and tracking it and helping people understand their sleep at a deep level so that they don't have to deal with, worrying about sleep or not sleeping. And we've had people, I'm not kidding you, decades on tons of medication, like heavy medication. In 8 weeks, they're sleeping naturally, no medication.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And so that's where we, that's an offering that we have. And if somebody's, listening to this and you're struggling with your sleep, we'd love to support you.
And where do they go to find this? Just online or on Instagram as well? Or
Yeah. Sleep Science Academy is the website, but on Instagram, Sleep Science Academy or Devin Burke Wellness. Same with YouTube. So actually, YouTube is I do have some really great content on a lot of the things that we teach at the Academy on YouTube. So for people that are interested in just learning a little bit more about some of these techniques and tools, YouTube would be a great place to start.
because at your academy, you teach dynamic sleep recalibrating. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So dynamic in that we pull from a lot of different places. So I studied a lot of different things. So what I've done is I pulled all of these, from all these different things I studied, I pulled out the best things, the best ingredients that work for people with their sleep. So it's dynamic, and recalibrating is we're recalibrating your body to sleep naturally. So the body knows how to sleep. It wants to sleep. It's just sometimes a matter of refining it or recalibrating it. So that's just the fancy name that I gave it because I had to give it a name.
Oh, I love it.
So that's what dynamic sleep recalibrating is.
Well, it makes sense. So, okay, I have one last question before we close here. I'm just curious because you did say you talked about tracking your sleep. Do you like the tracking devices, like the new rings, the Aura rings that everybody uses?
Yes and no. No, if you don't understand how to actually interpret the data and what to do about it, which I would say is majority of people. That's just you're going to wake up, you're going to get a score that says, hey, you didn't sleep well. No. You didn't recover well. And then you're going to be like, well, what do I do? You're going to go on the internet, you're going to start searching for stuff, and you're going to start trying things that probably won't work. Okay. So for that, no. If you have a system and if you have support and if you understand how to use it correctly, it's amazing. It's amazing. It really is. Because you really can't master what you don't measure. And so sleep is not a conscious thing. So having something that can give us this feedback, this data to then understand and work with and see how when we make these lifestyle and behavioral changes and mindset changes, how that improves sleep, it's incredible. It's amazing because it just gives you that feedback of, oh, this is working. Okay, I'm not broken. I'm not alone. What I'm experiencing isn't unique. And that's going to give you the confidence to continue to do the thing that will really help you.
I tell people it depends on their personality because my husband has one and absolutely loves his. And I refuse to buy one because my personality will be like, if I get a bad score in the morning, if I have like you're a 30%, recovered, ready to go, I'm going to be so mad. And then all day I'm going to be like, oh, well, I feel this way because I only had 30% recovery, and
exactly.
I just want to go throughout the day. I don't want to be worried, oh, I only got this amount.
And that's really where that's great that you know yourself like that. For so many people, that's their reality, and it can ruin your day. Like you wake up and the first thing people do is they check their sleep score and it tells them, hey, you slept like crap. And now all day long, it's just like they're thinking about sleep. They're like, oh, and then again, that creates pressure around sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're thinking about it. Oh, I'm going to get cancer. Oh, if I don't sleep, I'm going to age and, all these things, which then creates anxiety, which then gets in the way of sleep. I mean, this is the pattern that so many people, I see it literally, I'm not kidding you. I've seen it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And just understanding that, it can be game changing for people.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm always like, if I got 30 one morning, that night I'd be so stressed having to get a good night's sleep, and I wouldn't get a good night's sleep because of that stress. So
exactly. No, and that I know it sounds really simple and it sounds like so obvious. For whatever reason, people don't see that. And and once you see it, you can't change something that you're not aware of. And so part of the process of any change is becoming aware of the things that are getting in the way of something that's so natural from happening. And so using a device can help us do that, but it also can be the very thing that gets in the way from us having that progress.
Yeah.
So again, it's how you use it. It's a tool. And so if you use a tool in the right way, fantastic. If you use it in the wrong way, it can actually be the thing that gets in the way.
I totally get that. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you and having you answer all of these questions of mine. And I always end my podcast with asking my guests what they have found to be the best ingredient in life. What would you say it is?
Deep connection, relationships. I think that's what creates life. That's what, for me at least, adds meaning to my life. And it's just when you have those deep connections with people that you care about, it's rewarding. That is the ingredient for an amazing life is cultivating amazing relationships with people.
Ooh, I love that. And you know what? I'm going to add to this because I had this thought this week. I was wondering what stressed me out or made me the most like frustrated and angry in life. And it is when one of my connections with someone or one of my relationships is off with someone, when there's, frustration or anger or something between two people. And I thought that is when I am like suffering the most with not finding that joy. And so I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it's so important. People actually, when they studied the cultures that live the longest, the blue zones, that was one of the core elements that they found is the community, is having a community, having connection with other people. It's so important to health. It really is. And a lot of times people are not sleeping because what you just said, there's some type of disconnection. Maybe it's with a friend or a family member or there's some type of relational tension, which creates tension in the body, which makes sleep more challenging. So these are the types of things that sleep can teach us to look at. Well, what in my world of relationships needs to be healed or communicated or resolved or let go of or forgiven. And then it's amazing. I've seen it again, hundreds and hundreds of times. People, if that's the thing, they resolve that, sleep happens.
Yeah, that makes sense because relationships can definitely be stressful, therefore affecting the sleep.
Big time.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know the listeners have learned a ton. You guys go check them out on social media, on YouTube, like he said. Go check out the Sleep Science Academy, especially if you're struggling, if you have kids that are struggling. I know it will be so helpful to you. He has helped thousands of people with their sleep. And knowing that there's 50 million people struggling with sleep, we have got to help people. So thank you, Devin, for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for what you do at Just Ingredients. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
Yeah, great work. We need more companies and people that actually care about what the products that they're creating, and so I just wanted to acknowledge you for the work that you've done and creating that.
Thank you, Devin. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Just Ingredients podcast to learn more about your health and good ingredients to life. Plus, get daily tips at just.ingredients on Instagram.